Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 8-Bit Adventures Podcast. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest geeky news of the past week. So this is the week of September 29th, the end of September. Hope you all are doing fantastic and having a fantastic week. I am your host, Sean Hayes, also known as 8-Bit Adventures, and so this was a difficult show to put together because ultimately we had two topics that would normally have fallen under our deep dive segment. We had a Nintendo Direct and we had D&D Celebration. So ultimately I had to choose. I had to make a choice. So what I'm going to do is we're going to quickly cover a lot of the stuff from the Nintendo Direct in quickfire news. But if after, we talk about D&D Celebration during the deep dive and folks want to get back into, the Nintendo Direct stuff, we can certainly do that. I'll also spend a little bit of extra time if folks really want talking about some of the things. So yeah, hope everyone's doing well. That you're staying warm and toasty now that the temperatures are starting to cool off here as we approach, or as we head into fall's in full swing. So now that we got that out of the way, we are going to get right into quickfire news with the Nintendo Direct. All right, so the Nintendo Direct was on September 23rd. We got quite a few reveals. Some surprises, some not so surprises. So they showed Metroid Dread again. That comes out on October 8th. They showed Bayonetta 3. We got some footage. It's coming out in 2022. One of the big surprises, N64 and Genesis Online is going to be a thing. Like, it's going to be a subscription upgrade, so you're going to have to pay extra for it, but, it's happening, folks. It's actually happening. And Banjo-Kazooie is going to be not as part of the initial lineup, but it is coming. It's confirmed as being coming by Nintendo. Wild. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a, 3D open world Kirby game. And we got a very bizarre Super Mario movie cast lineup that I don't have good feelings about. I just don't. There's a lot of folks who are super pumped that they want to go see this movie because they don't know if it's going to work. They're expecting it to fail and they want to see it crash and burn. I don't know. Chris Pratt as Mario has me so confused and conflicted. Jack Black as Bowser. I just don't. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. What's going on? I don't know. So the N64 line. Oh, also in addition, wireless N64 and GameCube Genesis controllers will also be available for $50 each. Just looking up the launch lineup. So the launch lineup will include Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Star Fox 64, Dr. Mario 64, Mario Tennis, Yoshi's Story, Winback, Sin and Punishment, and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Coming soon, Banjo-Kazooie, F-Zero X, Kirby 64, Mario Golf, Paper Mario, Pokemon Snap, and The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. That's a pretty good lineup. There's not a whole lot that I have personally that isn't on there that I think belongs on there. So yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with this list. Donkey Kong 64, like we may see it, we may not see it. I have it. I don't know if it necessarily belongs on there. Because it's bad, folks. It's bad. Nostalgia doesn't make it a good game. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I have. So I have Quest. Quest is not a good game. Here's an interesting one is whether... So, like, in Japan, Animal Crossing was an N64 title. It was not a GameCube title. So that would be interesting. Or maybe, like, it only comes out in Japan for N64 Online, and then it doesn't come out for any other territories. We don't know. I mean, Smash Brothers, like Super Smash Brothers was an N64 title. GoldenEye's not going to happen. So like Banjo-Kazooie is surprising. GoldenEye is like, it's the problem that Scott Pilgrim had, right? Is that there are a number of different rights holders to that game. Perfect Dark was GameCube. It was not N64. I guess I stand corrected. Must have been a late launch title. Yeah, 2000 or 2000? That's late for the N64. I don't see Perfect Dark happening. I think Banjo-Kazooie is a miracle for Nintendo to get it. I don't see any other Rare properties coming over that aren't already like Donkey Kong. I mean, I don't like. I think it's a miracle, but it's the fact that Microsoft was willing to work with Nintendo to put Banjo in Smash. You know, and I think Microsoft is very willing to have their IPs opened up. I don't see Perfect Dark making the cut. Geez, I'm trying to think of what else. Sorry, I also have a screaming kid in the background and I'm having trouble concentrating. I mean, here's another one that we'll never get is Pokemon Snap's coming. It's in the expansion pack. Rogue Squadron, we won't get. Just because of licensing issues. So, anyway, yeah, Kirby 64. Quest for the Crystal Shards. So seeing footage from Bayonetta 3 looked really good, really sharp, really smooth. Kirby in the Forgotten Land looks beautiful. Really nice to see Kirby in a 3D environment and just looking really good. Triangle Strategy kept its really terrible, awful name. Trying to think of what else. There will be further presentations for Animal Crossing and the final Smash Fighter. But we did get confirmation that Animal Crossings is about the Roost, so Brewster is finally coming back. ActRaiser was a surprise announcement, and like it's out. There's like a ActRaiser remaster that's out right now. Also, a Castlevania GBA collection is available. So those were nice grabs. And then Pokemon wasn't part of the Direct, although they could have thrown this stuff in there. Was they showed another trailer for things of just the stuff you're going to be able to do in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Just some little stuff of like shops in town and everything. and some like how boss battles are going to work, and that there's like a new Scyther evolution called Cleaver. So, all in all, pretty good presentation. Monster Hunter paid DLC, so in the style of Iceborne's, coming next summer. Called Sunbreak, and had what I thought was, Fatalis, but is apparently not. So, just another, admittedly, what I feel like is very generic dragon. Is apparently some kind of new monster. So I wish, one of the things that I don't like about Monster Hunter is how they keep seeming to retread, like, final end game monster is just like kind of super generic dragon. And there are plenty of older Monster Hunter games that really lean into like weird stuff, like the giant land squid that covers itself in bones. Like, that's cool. Or the flying balloon octopus, or there's some kind of just giant Jormungandr like serpent. Like, those are all cool ideas. If it's just generic D&D Dread Dragon kind of model, not great. It's not exciting. All right, but enough about the Nintendo Direct, because we've got some more stuff to talk about. Up next, Cowboy Bebop. Netflix showed off the opening title sequence for its upcoming live action series. Also doing like a side-by-side comparison with the animated opening. And it seems like they try to kind of match up, and sort of recreate the animated opening while still keeping some parts, different and original. So I never watched Cowboy Bebop, but just as a visual artist looking at the two side by side, they did a pretty good job at like matching some of the visuals, but some of the sequences were like a weird, like not quite live action, not quite animated, and it was a little off-putting. So that part I don't know about, but it was a pretty cool opening. And the parts that did match up, I thought that they did a nice job at matching up the visual style, and the just overall aesthetic. So in transitioning from like an animated piece to a live action piece. So Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout now holds the Guinness World Record for most downloaded PlayStation Plus game. So congratulations, Fall Guys. I think it had now unseated Fortnite for that title. Activision Blizzard back in the news. So apparently even more lawsuits, but this time they settled for $18 million with the US EEOC, which is not the suit from the state of California. This is like another lawsuit that was thrown on top of things. Those other suits are still pending. The company is now being investigated by the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchanges Commission. And to top things off, its chief legal officer resigned on the 17th of this month, September of 2021. So they settled with one regulatory body, but there appears to be like 4 other suits. One being the aforementioned sort of state of California lawsuit, one being a class action lawsuit from investors, one being this investigation by the SEC. There was this one, and then I believe there's one more. So a lot of stuff a lot of legal stuff happening. And finally, Russell T Davies will return as the showrunner for Doctor Who when current showrunner Chris Chibnall steps down in 2022, just before the 60th anniversary special. So, which will happen in 2023. So, Russell T Davies, known as the showrunner who helped bring Doctor Who back sort of into the public foray and helped it become sort of this new, very popular entity in geek culture, is set to come back. So the production company Bad Wolf is sort of talking about, is talking about how it's this like weird sort of circular trajectory that's going on. But yeah, everybody's seemingly very excited about this development. All right. So that is going to conclude our quickfire news. So we're going to get into our deep dive of a lot of the future of D&D news from D&D Celebration 2021. Okay. So, oh boy, there was some stuff revealed here. So this was a panel that happened on Sunday night with some of the folks in charge over at the Wizards D&D team, including Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford, as well as, oh boy, I can't remember. It's essentially their boss, Ray Winninger. That's it. And then I think it's their director of product releases. I can't remember her name. I'm drawing a blank on it. But anyway, so what they talked about was what we're going to see as far as what directions D&D is going to go through in the future. Now that the game's been out for about, or for 5th edition has been out for about 8 years now, seems like since Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, there is going to be a bigger focus on this idea of the multiverse within D&D. So this is not just necessarily like, because D&D already has like a weird multiverse thing going on with the different planes. This is going to be the idea of multiple material planes using a multiverse concept. And like, this isn't necessarily a new one, but it's something that they're really going to push to the forefront. And I wonder if having this big focus on it in popular culture from things like Marvel and DC, now like big in the public consciousness, as opposed to, in a very specific audience, is going to help reinforce that and help get the public engaged with this idea. So to kick things off is in January of this year, there is going to be a new book, Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. Big monster book. And there is going to be a gift bundle where it comes out with Tasha's and Xanathar's, but it will also be released as a standalone book. They initially wanted to have it be released for the holidays, but due to global supply chain issues, everybody, they're not going to make that happen. They just said flat out, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen for the holiday season, which I kind of appreciate. Like, I'm seeing a lot of Kickstarters that I've backed, like, now suddenly be like, oh no, like, and like they're very frustrated because like they had initial timelines planned and everything, but because global supply chain issues continue to be a thing, like being delayed months upon months upon months. So it's one of those things where like it's, that instead of saying like a year ago, like, hey, this is going to come out holiday 2022. Instead they waited, and now they're like, and now they were saying, we would have liked to have done it, but not going to happen. So what this book is going to be is it's going to be a lot of existing content, reproduced in new formats. So it's going to have something around like 250 monsters and 30 different sort of player character race options in the book, for things that are setting agnostic. That don't have stuff that's very tied to a particular setting. And they will have streamlined stat blocks and sort of rebalancing for challenge rating, because there's a lot of monsters that don't make sense for the challenge rating that they're at. They're either too easy or they're too tough. Because folks, challenge rating is a garbage mechanic. I'm gonna put my hot takes in here. That 4th edition did it better. Monsters have levels, monsters have roles, and monsters also have designations for if they're meant to be tougher than normal. And it made it so much easier to do XP budgets, because like you didn't have to consult a table to do it. It was just, very clearly you could go by rule of thumb, and anyway, I could get on a whole rant about challenge rating, but basically they're retooling stuff and they're going to rebalance things to actually fall in line with what their design expectations are. Notably, spellcasters will no longer have a ability listing called spellcasting and then just list a bunch of spells and force you to go look to another book. It's going to be retooled so that they will have abilities that mimic spells or just be spells straight out that will have the stats printed right in the stat block. So that is something that I appreciate. Personally, I would just prefer to see them just reintroduce 4E stat blocks for monsters. But, I'm going to leave that to be my own personal pet project. In addition, 2 major classic settings are going to be showcased in 2022 with a sort of a peek at a third. One of these settings released in 2022, they showed a rough sketch for initial concepts of the alt cover design for, and it will feature D&D's favorite miniature giant space hamster, Boo. So this could mean Planescape. This could mean Spelljammer. This could mean like a Baldur's Gate setting. We don't know. We don't know. But it's something that would have Boo on the alt cover. So who knows? And another major classic setting will be showcased in 2023. So this is already causing wild speculation. So classic settings would mean, and so they are also specifying major classic settings. So probably things like Greyhawk, possibly Athos, maybe Kryn. Maybe, could be Planescape, Spelljammer, maybe, I know there's been a push for Mystara. I don't think we're going to see Birthright. I don't think that's happening. This is interesting. And I think, it'll be particularly interesting to see with a lot of the older settings how they address certain things. Let's put it this way. I would be shocked if I do not think 2 of these settings are going to be the big problematic ones. Let's put it that way. Namely Al-Qadim being one of them. And the other one being the horribly titled Oriental Adventures. I don't think it's going to be those unless it's the versions that are being worked on by teams of people that would be in that sort of real world demographic that are trying to essentially like rewrite the campaign settings to not just be a bunch of like 80s tropes written by white guys. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I would fully expect. All right, so here's my speculation, and we can all write this down, see how well I do. I would say, now that Wizards has sort of made nice with Weiss and Hickman, we might see a Kryn book either in one of the 4. I would say Dark Sun probably. I think we could probably see a Planescape Spelljammer combo book, maybe. And possibly Greyhawk, I think. I think there's enough people that are clamoring for Greyhawk, despite the fact that I think Greyhawk's a really boring setting, because like it's sword and sorcery, which is, for me, not interesting enough on its own anymore. Like, there's so many other settings that do so many interesting things that, like, sword and sorcery seems like you are going to have to come up with other stuff in order to make it distinct from just every other fantasy game. So there's that. But I think that's what we'll likely see. You know, I would be overjoyed to see Mystara because I missed out on that. So I think that would be great. So yeah. And I would say for major classic settings that it would have to be something it would have to go back to at least 2nd edition, if not 1st edition, to be considered like a classic. Chris Perkins also talked about they have in development. So like these may not see the light of day ever, but in internal development are like 2 completely new settings. So the fact that he says like this may never see the light of day or whatever, I don't think this is the case of like Hasbro wanting or Wizards of the Coast proper to want the D&D team to put out like more Magic the Gathering settings. I would be very interested to see, you know, maybe one of them is like Urban Arcana, right? Like if you want to do something that like really is out there and a new thing for D&D, like take the old Urban Arcana concept from D20 Modern, but like actually fully flesh it out. And you know, basically put a whole bunch of this is how you do modern day, like D&D but modern day. I think that would be a wild concept. And then of course you could even advance it even further and have and then just push it even further and do sci-fi. You know? And that's the book that you finally introduce psionics fully in. Actually, if they do Dark Sun, we would see psionics in Dark Sun. That is for sure what would happen there. But I think Urban Arcana 5e would be fantastic. And I think that would be the way to do it. Like for all the stuff that D20 had going for it, like it felt like D20 Modern felt like it felt weird. Like I think doing just a general modern game, there's a lot of other systems that do it better. But I think if you're going to do urban fantasy, like, and for whatever reason you don't want to do Shadowrun, I think D&D could do stuff that would work well and mesh well. But my hope would be that Wizards would kind of take the approach that I'm taking with Jamora and think like, you know, not necessarily just take real life and just add magic, but like think about like what are the systems that you have in D&D, so like that it's still compatible with base player's handbook. So like economies still use gold and silver. So it's still like a coin-based economy. And things like that. Just so that you don't have to get into weird like conversions and things. Or introduces an optional module or whatever. All right. So in 2024, for I think they said the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, we are essentially going to get 5.5. So new iterations of the core rulebooks are going to be released, taking a look at a lot of new design philosophies they have. I'd imagine it's going to include a lot of tweaks to things that like weren't very clearly worded. I'd imagine probably some format and layout changes in the books to make them easier to read and look stuff up. Things to make things a bit clearer. I would expect a full rework of the Dungeon Master's Guide, since like there's so much in the DMG that I have seen so many Twitter threads and so many Reddit posts and everything of people like basically homebrewing this entire mechanic subsystem that does the same exact thing as like a rule that's written in the DMG. And when you point it out, people are like, oh, really? Like, they don't know. So it'd be great if that book was like written differently and organized better so that you wouldn't get these issues. Is that like, because like, people developing solutions and coming up with their own systems and things, that's great. It's a creative process and everything. However, if you spend 20 hours developing this idea, and the end result is literally like the same thing that you get on page X of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and like the solution's already out there, I would feel foolish. And that's just my take, is that like I would have felt like I wasted 20 hours solving a problem that didn't exist. And also, I mean, as part of the scientific process, I believe step 1 is research to determine if somebody has already figured this out. So that's just the thing. But I mean, the fact that it happens so often means that the book needs a redesign. Also, the whole monster and encounter design section is garbage. That's my second hot take of the day. It's not great. It needs a new layout. I mean, you could like have it be a step-by-step process, but have it be laid out better, not just giant blocks of text. Like, make it a flowchart. And also figure out a better way than just like a CR table and talking about stuff that way, because that's just terrible. I also don't know if I mean, Milestone seems to be pretty popular. If XP based leveling still seems to be the default, or if they go towards milestone leveling. But I mean, I would also love to see like other XP systems. Like, I still have one for like an Unearthed Arcana from 2017 that talked about just like a different way of doing XP, and I was like, this is great. Where it's like you don't use the XP values that are listed on monster listings. Like, you might use it to build encounters, but like, it's if the encounter is a suitable challenge for the heroes and they defeat it, like, they get like, X number of experience points, which is like equivalent to just overcoming a challenge. So I used it to like help develop my own system where it was and by doing that was able to like play up or down the amount of experience that you got from doing combat. I actually lowered it down, figuring that like, it's Dungeons and Dragons. People are going to do combat because people like to show off their cool abilities and everything. So like, that in and of itself is the reward. So yeah. And I already talked about but the 2 entirely new settings currently in development. They may also inform design decisions for the general game going forward of like things that they come up with in here. And one of the things that they really talked about was like the feedback they got from not doing combat in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. What a novel concept is that Wizards of the Coast has finally started to realize in 2021 that, hey, you know, this whole like social role-playing pillar of the game that we talk about, but we barely put any abilities that reflect that? Hey, it seems like people actually enjoy playing that part of the game. And like, there's whole character concepts that are built around that in place of just like straight up munchkin murder hobos. So I would fully expect to see more rules modules that focus on things like that, of like either, you know, different types of D&D games, or essentially like different paths for like actual different paths for success, and not just like leaving it up to the dungeon master to hand wave stuff, or arbitrarily set DCs. Because like that is always an option, you know, being a tabletop role-playing game. But like that's always an option, like in every tabletop role-playing game. The way D&D is at its strength when you have these systems in place, because like it's a systematic game. And like, yeah, you have the combat system in place and the combat rules and everything in order to like, you know, make sure that everything's organized and stuff. But like, you can take that concept and apply it to other parts of the game to give people that might be interested in Dungeons and Dragons, but might want to do characters who do other cool things and contribute in other ways, or have strengths outside of just like I swing and hit things, and have that cool crunch factor that so much of the book is devoted towards combat for. Now you might say that, but like, you know, like combat gets a chapter, mostly because like you have to figure out how those work. And here's the thing, like when you really get down to it, I mean, making an attack roll is not really all that different than making an ability check. The difference is, instead of skills, you have weapons. And then, really, that's it. And then it's the fact that it's a keyword that says attack instead of ability check. I mean, Bessem D20, right, did this by, like combat was literally a skill that you took. And that's like, it was things like that, and like dodge, so that like you could make a dodge roll against an attack roll or something instead of armor class or whatever. Because yeah, I mean, in theory, like you could just, you know, and White Wolf does that with their systems, where, you know, martial arts or swords or, you know, just brawl or something like is just in there among your list of skills, and like it's just another thing that you can pick up and learn. And if you do that, like you're good at fighting. So that's a thing, you know, is that ultimately, like, it feels like D&D artificially creates this thing of combat being more complicated by creating the separation of saying like, oh, combat, like you have to do all this, you know, different stuff. Like, when I don't know. But I also don't know if it's because I've taken game design courses, like, and like really thought about game design, like, and if there's other people who are, it's sort of in the same boat as me, where like, you know, maybe they've been playing the game for a long time, maybe they've either taken, you know, studied like various system designs or whatever, not just like game systems, but like other underlying systems, maybe like math or computer science or something, that are able to look at this and be like, oh, this is like literally the same thing, except now we have like a whole chapter devoted to combat, whereas, you know, like that has all very specific use cases, whereas, you know, like for skills, it's like a very short section. I mean, you could very easily do something like you make strength ability checks for, you know, and you list like, you know, athletics. Well, strength is a bad example because like athletics is the only skill that it's used for, I believe. But so, you know, strength, you know, if you want to like jump or swim or climb or something like that. And then also to attack with a melee weapon, like, because that's how it works. That's literally how it works, is it just has the attack keyword attached to it, which means that certain abilities affected differently than others. So yeah. Also, I miss keywords. D&D 4E got some stuff pretty right, and keywords were one of them. Man, I miss that. But yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't know. I'm very excited for it. And I will say that, so I've seen in some of the Discord channels and everything that I'm in, that there's like a concern that if it's going to completely replace the existing core rule books, that it kind of like screws over people that are going to be just coming into the game. You know, like 2020 in 2023. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, so well, the concern is people coming into the hobby now. So I would say that's just a value argument, you know, because like if you pick up a player's handbook, you know, and it's like $50, I mean, that's 20 and likely fall 2024. So a full 3 years away. If you had told me, like, let's say as a college student, right? That if I paid $50 for a book, that I would be able to use it to play in all sorts of games. Because like when I was in college, I was playing in an average of maybe 2 to 3 campaigns a semester. So let's say 4 to 6 games a year. Not to mention games over the summer, which was like, let's say 2. All right. So now we're talking 6 to 8 games a year. And then for 3 years, I mean, that's a lot, right? I mean, that's a lot of playtime too. And then to say like, oh, well, there's a reprinting coming out, you know, a couple of years from now. I mean, I think I'd still be on board. Especially if it's a place where like you could trade it in, like if it accepts trades. I don't know if say our local stores here buy books. I don't know if they do. But that's, I mean, you know, there's probably going to be people who still want that stuff. So who knows? Yeah, I think it's weird because it's not a full edition iteration. So like that might make it less likely that people pick up stuff, but who knows? I certainly hope that they hold up better than the initial print run of the 5th edition books, because the first player's handbook that I bought for 5th edition literally fell apart after a couple of weeks, and I was not happy about that. I ended up buying like 3 player's handbooks because of all weird issues that kept happening with them. So yeah, that to me is more of my concern, I think. But anyway, also, geez, I had it right at the front and I didn't even talk about it. We got some previews from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, namely some real cursed images that we got of the Eyedrake, which is what happens when a beholder becomes obsessed with dragons and creates a dragon beholder or a draconic beholder, with a big old eyeball in its mouth. And the Elder Brain Dragon, which is when Illithids capture a dragon, and then the Elder Brain infects it and basically like eats its brain and takes over its mind. Yeah, my players aren't fans. Depending on how the current game goes, I may or may not decide to use this. It would be a bit of a stretch to have it work within this current story, but just it's some weird stuff going on. The breath weapon is a bunch of Mind Flayer tadpoles. Like, Mind Flayer tadpole breath it's the worst. It is the worst out of anything I have seen in Dungeons and Dragons. Like, it's even worse than slot eggs. It's just and it's the artwork is truly horrifying. It's just it's like a Portuguese man of war decided to put all of its tentacles inside the brain cavity of a dragon. And then it's also got one of those weird like devourer tongue things going on. So yeah. So that's it. I mean, I just wanted to highlight those two. I did not actually get to see the Treasury of Dragons panel. So I have to go back and kind of rewatch that to get some stuff in there. But you know, I'm excited for that book. Swarm Tongue Hydra's breath weapon was pretty bad too. Spewed forth all its guts, which then ate the player and flew back in its empty maw. So it's a starfish. Oh, that's from 4E. Okay. Yeah. That's basically a starfish. Also, shout out to 4E. Woo! I will never not give a shout out to 4E and its wonderful monster design. Oh, one of the things I talked about with monster rebalancing is that they'll give monsters more hit points. Because that seems to be a problem with like if you got a paladin in the party, it's a problem. Like, hit points are a problem. So I also would love to see if they actually codified minion rules, rather than having it be something that like you had to be familiar with 4th edition to incorporate into your games. Because I think minion and actually having minions codified would help a lot of encounter designs. But yeah, that once again, me wanting 4th edition features and 5th edition because 4th edition had better encounter design is you know, again, my hot take, and that is a hill that I will die on. So, all right, that is going to wrap up our deep dive. So now it's time for quest log. All right, so last week's quest log assignment was to play a board game. I played one round of One Deck Dungeon using the campaign mode, picking up one of a character that I haven't played in a while. Played through that, found out like halfway through that I was doing it wrong. It was too late to go back and do stuff. I couldn't fix it. I would have to like start completely over, and it was like, I'm not going to do that. I do enjoy One Deck Dungeon. You know, it's not as strategic as a lot of games are. It's a dice chucker, so there's like a lot of chance elements involved. But it's got a lot of dice manipulation mechanics, which I think if you're going to have a dice rolling game, having a lot of those mechanics in there makes it very interesting. And that's something where, you know, I've toyed around an idea of making like a D&D like game that used 3d6 instead of a d20, and a lot of, you know, abilities and stuff would like augment or manipulate your dice instead of just adding like flat bonuses or advantage or disadvantage or whatever. So, but yeah, big fan of One Deck Dungeon. So this week is going to be Pokemon Unite. So there are a bunch of role-specific event missions. Namely, there's an event where you play each role 5 times and then 10, a total of 10 times for the overall goal, but then they have like a mini goal of 5 times. Counts for both. My goal is to finish all of those. So, so the roles include all around attacker, speedster, defender, support, and I think that's it. I think there's 5 roles. And so you gotta play as each one of them 10 times basically. So it's really getting me to try out different Pokemon. Mamoswine also released the other day. I think yesterday. I think it was yesterday. So being able to try out that. But it's it's a new interesting thing. Gets me to play a little bit. Past couple of matches have been super frustrating. So it's been difficult to get in and like play more than a match or two, just because it's that I had a match where we lost 968 to 0. Like 0. Nobody on my team scored any points, myself included. But I was playing a support. I was playing Eldegoss, actual support. So like, I mean, yeah, if I don't score any points, that's bad. But like, if I'm spending my entire time trying to heal the team or whatever, like, it's understandable. Nobody scored any points, and we had a Cinderace, we had a Mamoswine, we had an Eldegoss, we had I think a Venusaur. Like, it should not have happened. Oh, and a Zeraora. So like, this was a team that, like, well-rounded team, should have done well, and just got absolutely hosed. So like, that happens, and I'm like, why am I still playing this game? So I'm gonna make it a goal to finish that event mission, which also directly benefits me because there's like a bunch of item rewards that are associated with it. So here's the strategy. All right, so support, I'm pretty sure I only have Eldegoss, so Eldegoss is going to be support. All around is going to be Garchomp, because turns out, like, once you have the items to support him, Garchomp is a lot of fun. Speedster, I think, is going to be Gengar. I do like me some Gengar. Gengar is pretty frustrating to play right now, but I do enjoy it. Attacker. So Attacker gets interesting. Venusaur got buffed pretty well. And now, like, beforehand, I would have just been like, I'm going to pick Greninja all day, every day. Greninja's got a playstyle that I like. I tend to do a little bit better with Greninja than the other Pokemon. But like Venusaur, they took Venusaur's like tankier build and they buffed it astronomically, and it's just so much fun to play. You have so much longevity, and it's a lot of like leech seed, like chip type damage, as opposed to just like big booming attacks. So it's nice. It's a lot of fun. Defender's also tough. Blastoise is my boy. But also like Snorlax or Mamoswine. They're all fun. Like, tanking in Pokemon Unite is probably the most interesting and most fun role. I would have tried out like Mr. Mime as a support. I would have tried him out, but I don't have Mr. Mime. I don't have Wigglytuff. So yeah. I also don't have Machamp either, and like, he's like one of the best Pokemon in the game. So, all right, so there we go. So we got so all around is gonna be Garchomp. Attacker is gonna be Venusaur or Greninja, depending on how well I'm doing in matches that day. Speedster is gonna be Gengar. Support's gonna be Eldegoss, and Defender, realistically, is gonna be Blastoise, or if I want to practice with Mamoswine and see if I actually like Mamoswine or not. Mamoswine's a neat, like, melee-oriented combatant, where Ice Fang is, like, you hit the target, you freeze the target, and then like you pick the target up and you decide which way to suplex them. And then you can pick high horsepower, which like you dash and then you stomp at the end of it, and it's like 2 separate attacks. So it's a little tricky to play around, but also Mamoswine's ability is Thick Fat, which has like a whole laundry list of things that it does, including like actual defending goals, where like while you're defending, like basic attacks or whatever, like actually slow down goal turn in speed. So that's pretty interesting. Like that's an interesting mechanic in the game. So that's gonna be it, and I will report back. We'll see. This will likely be the most difficult quest log that I try to get done in a while. So, all right. Well, folks, that is going to wrap up this week's episode. Thank you all for joining me. If you want to catch more of this podcast, of the 8-Bit Adventures comics, artwork, and all that stuff, you can check out the website over at 8-bitadventures.com. If you'd like to help support projects like this podcast, there is a Patreon over at patreon.com/8bitadventures. Big shout out and thank you to all of the current 8-Bit Adventures patrons. Your continued support really means a lot to me, and it helps to keep projects like this going. So just a big shout out and thank you. Our opening theme is One Up by Professor Shy Guy. You can find his work over at professorshyguy.bandcamp.com. So that's it for this episode. Again, thank you all for joining me. And as always, have fun, happy gaming, and enjoy your pie cake.